Now, yes, we have reached our final block. Reflections of the end of this meeting, because we've shared so many experiences, we've reflected, we've co-constructed with the commitment and the Declaration of Antigua, which takes all these intentions home. And I would like to invite Ian Macpherson, team lead of Knowledge and Innovation Exchange, for some final words.
Thank you very much. Muchas gracias. Just quickly, that photo. This morning in the coffee break, a SUMMA colleague came up to me and said, that photo that you submitted, your profile picture, it's not going to work. It's black and white, you look really serious and a bit miserable. So we're going to change it. So that's why you have a photo of me grinning like I've had 10 coffees. So anyway. But it's actually very apt, I think, for the spirit of this meeting, this discussion, which honestly has been full of joy and levity and also seriousness as well. But let me just make 3 quick points by way of reflection. One from the past, one from the present, and then one about the future. So this first point is historical. And we learned over the last few days that SUMMA came into being in 2016. We also learned that the Yidan Prize came into being in 2016. And as it happens, KIX was conceived in 2016. So we have triplets, right, at that moment. But it took several years, actually, for KIX to launch properly, to launch formally. It actually took 3 years of a number of design iterations through the different GPE committees. And you may have heard the expression that a giraffe is a horse designed by a committee, because everyone is pulling in different directions. And actually what we had after 3 years was a design blueprint for KIX that frankly was very fanciful, had lots of elements to it, and was highly ambitious. The important point is that the motivation for it was driven by partner countries. And it was partner countries who said to GPE, we need a platform to be able to exchange knowledge, to be able to connect with one another, to be able to share evidence. And it was at that point that IDRC were contracted to pull this rather fanciful KIX design blueprint and transform it into an operationalized program. And so the huge credit of IDRC, that began in 2019. And you may know that in addition to the Latin America and Caribbean hub led by SUMMA and OECS, who came on board in 2020, there are 3 other KIX hubs, 2 in Africa and 1 for Europe, Middle East, North Africa, Asia Pacific. And we are honored, we are so humbled, and we are so excited to work with SUMMA and to work with OECS to drive the work in this context. And so since KIX came into being, I think Trish made a comment about how many people engaged in KIX activities last year. Actually, just in the last 5 months, there's been over 367 events led by hubs and different applied research projects. Over 19,000 people have engaged in the last 4 months. This includes over 15,000 from GPE partner countries. And by my count, that means that over 100,000 individuals have engaged in KIX events since it was conceived and implemented. And that happens because people engage with it, because it's adding value. And that, for me, is a remarkable achievement, and it also shows evolution and growth. So my second point is about the present. And the last few days have been truly phenomenal. So much has happened that it's actually difficult to lift highlights, but I will attempt just a few. The first is that, as gathered in this room, we have researchers, we have ministers, we have policymakers, we have representatives from governments, we have multilateral agencies, international organizations, and yet the level of discussion between these unlikely bedfellows sometimes has been incredibly candid, incredibly honest, and incredibly sincere. And that, for me, feels really special. I think it was Yuri in the presentation yesterday said that statistics don't tell the whole story. We are all deeply committed to our work. We have to focus on budgets, work plans, implementation. But oftentimes we miss or can miss why it is that we do what we do. And I want to commend again the film yesterday that was shown and developed by SUMMA. That was outstanding. It was not only testament to incredible filmmaking, but for me, it shows a real sensitivity, a real awareness on the part of SUMMA about why is it that we do what we do. This idea of corazón, right? There's a reason for all of this. There's a reason that we get together. There's a reason that we have to be progressive, that we have to be thinking differently about what we're doing. And I really applaud SUMMA for reminding us of that. And I think that that tone has carried across so many of the discussions in the last few days. And honestly, I felt really emotional, genuinely. Not only at the end of that film, I think you literally could have heard a pin drop, but over the course of the different discussions in the last few days. So we've had some incredible inputs, genuinely, and amazing presentations. The applied research projects have shared their work, which has been truly phenomenal. It's impossible not to mention the sharing of experiences by Rukmini, who I don't know if is still in the room or not, but the work of Pratham and Tal in India, and also Vevu and the transformation in Sobral. Perfect timing, you just walked in. I was just talking about you. I think not only is the content outstanding, but I think we've also generally had a masterclass about communication and delivery as well. And if I may say, your deep humanity is genuinely as inspiring as the content of your work. And of course, the leadership of Minister Pineda for proposing the Antigua Declaration. I don't know if the minister is in the room. He might make another dramatic entrance when we're all up here. No, okay, no problem. But please pass on regards and thanks for proposing the Antigua Declaration. This is an incredibly powerful, spontaneous act that I like to think the minister capitalized on the energy of this meeting. And I commend the ministers and the representatives from different governments for seizing that moment and for holding yourselves and one another and ourselves accountable for actions. That's remarkable in my view. My final point is on the future. So we have a declaration which assesses practical action and progress, and against which we can hold ourselves accountable. We also have, over the course of the last few days, made a remarkable range of connections and commitments for follow-up. And this is essential. Separate to that, recently an external evaluation of KIX was conducted and concluded actually in April. And a number of you likely engaged in providing information and survey responses to questions from the evaluators. But that evaluation was used by the board of the Global Partnership for Education to determine whether to allocate future funding for KIX beyond its current program period of 2027. And the board approved that at a level of 2% from the replenishment that will be raised or concluded next April. And this is testament to the fact that KIX adds value, that it is supporting countries to advance policy reforms based on evidence that make a difference. So, of course, we're excited by that, and of course, we don't know what the final figure would be until that replenishment has concluded. But this is really exciting because it means that we can continue our work beyond 2027 and at least until 2030. And in the meantime, we will be tightening and sharpening what is working well in KIX. And these kinds of meetings and these kinds of discussions are an illustration of what is working well. This really demonstrates why KIX matters, this convening. Other issues that we will be focusing on are the stronger links between research organizations and academia and civil society engaging in policy dialogue at national level, engaging in local education groups. And I would ask for those organizations in local education groups to open the space to researchers and academia. And I would ask academia and research and civil society to claim your space in those discussions as well, appropriately, respectfully, and based on evidence. A further point is that we will be strengthening the connections between KIX and the GPE operating model, strengthening the connection and the engagement of academic institutions and research organizations and civil society. And this is really exciting because it's taken a while to get to this point. But I would like to commend my colleagues from GPE for seeing this and being part of that and being highly propositional and making sure that these points of connection now really starts to come together. And I will also use this as the opportunity to recall what Marco Mantonovelli mentioned in his opening remarks, namely the importance of funding education appropriately, the deep commitment to not only generating but understanding evidence, and importantly, the politics of knowledge, and to ensure that it informs policy dialogue and practice discussions, and the absolutely paramount importance of partnerships. This, for me, is almost like a holy trinity: funding, evidence, partnerships. And the partnerships piece is nuanced, because it's not just let's all come together. It relates to what Javier mentioned in his opening remarks about collaboration, about co-creation. This is what makes partnerships so important and so crucial. The other 2 points that Javier mentioned were around partnerships for social justice, and I cannot support and enforce that and encourage it enough, and thank you for raising that. And it loops back to the spirit and the heart of why it is that we're doing what we're doing. And also mechanization. I think that was the way that the interpretation came across, but systematization, making this more the normal practice of working together, of collaborating. And so, with those 3 points, I would like to offer my thanks. Firstly, to the government of Guatemala for hosting us in this truly incredible city. To SUMMA, yes, thank you. To SUMMA and to OECS for convening us, and in particular to Javier, to Raúl, to Germain, but also so many colleagues in SUMMA who have done such a stellar job, and often it's unseen and unrecognized, but truly from the bottom of my heart and from our hearts, thank you for all of the work. And I would like to call out Ma in particular for all those emails, all that correspondence. It's totally worth it. Where is Ma? Where is Ma? Is she here? Okay. And if I may also, seeing as you're hiding behind the flags, right, just make the observation that, to my point about the heart and the spirit of SUMMA in that film, Ma, your story was amazing. It was just a very powerful illustration of, again, why do we do what we do? Because of things like that, because of how it literally transforms lives. I would like to thank IDRC, Trish, and Floro for being truly amazing partners in this journey as we continue to go forwards. I'd also like to thank the production team. I have to say, it is highly impressive, the quality of all of this, the graphics, the sound, the audio, and particularly the interpreters. I was making the point that oftentimes when we go to multi-language events, the quality of interpretation is kind of a metric of how good this is going to go, and it has been amazing. So truly, thank you. I really applaud you. And it is also your skills that make these kinds of meetings able to take place. So thank you again. And finally, of course, and not least, is to you all, to the ministers, to the government representatives, to academia, to researchers, to civil society, to international organizations. Thank you genuinely for your engagement. It's why this matters, and it is what makes this work, is your engagement. So truly, thank you. It's been a privilege, and we really look forward to the next steps. I wish everyone a safe journey. Thank you. Sorry. Thank you, muchas gracias, merci beaucoup y muito obrigado.
Thank you, Ian. And to move on with these final words, I'd like to invite Florencio Ceballos from the IDRC of Canada. An applause, please.
Thank you, Carla. Good morning, everybody. I'd like to apologize for the authorities that have attended after 3 days of exchanges in this room. We are in a circle of trust and we're going to skip the protocol greetings. But many of you attended the encounter in Tegucigalpa 2 years ago, where we watched a video on the first day, and that was a great opportunity to meet for the very first time in a very long-awaited event because of the pandemic, and we saw an image of everything that was started. And in that first meeting, we initiated a whole conversations, and I see Edgar nod. We had a first conversation on the possibility of working with El Salvador that translated to the support of the reform project for the Nueva Escuela. And in those conversations, we spoke for the very, very first time with Stephanie on how to strengthen research skills, which now is a real-life project with the Secretariat in Honduras. And in that conversation, or in that meeting, we had a first conversation with Joel with the possibility of doing something with the University of the West Indies. We also had a first conversation on what we could do to support the abilities of MEs in the Eastern Caribbean in what now is a reality. So it was a very important encounter. However, I'd like to mention this, and I've commented this with several people this past days. There's a dynamic in this encounter which is quite different. 2 years ago, I recall that the different delegations of the countries of the OECS would sit in their own tables. It was hard to come together in a collective conversation. And maybe because the entire encounter was in Spanish, now the scenario is different. Our colleagues from the Eastern Caribbean have been very proactive in the conversations, and they've brought, in many cases, the collective effort in regards to teacher training. They've brought examples that are not only useful in the region, but are also inspiring for the world. We had a conversation yesterday, the day before yesterday, with Marco on what you are doing in the Eastern Caribbean is an important example for the challenges that the small islands in the Pacific and South Pacific are facing. And 2 years ago, in this meeting, at Tegucigalpa, we had the presence of a minister from the Dominica and participation from certain authorities from the origin country, or the host country, Honduras. Now, we've met with 5 minister and permanent secretariats, and if it were not because of Santa Lucia, Haiti, Guyana, Honduras, who would have really wanted to be here with us. And this morning, they announced something that nobody expected, which was the Declaration of Antigua. And I'm not saying this to boast or say that we're very influential or to give false ideas of influence, but I say this because this is a result of being capable of building and proving the value proposition that KIX has and that makes sense to all the countries and ministers, and generate that trust in order for that value proposition to become real. 2 years ago, a very important part of the attendance, especially of the national delegations, hardly knew about KIX or thought it was specific actions or encounters or webinars. Now, it's very few of us who really don't know about KIX, about concrete or specific exchange experiences, the visits, the country support, the participation transformation. This is no coincidence. This is a result of 2 intensive years of work where we refined our targets, where our research projects made important efforts to align and contribute to the ministerial priorities, where the KIX support for ministries went from being an intention to be tangible outcomes. So 2 years ago, when our research projects presented with posters in a session very similar to the one we have today, the reactions were passive, respectful, but skeptical. Now, this past days, we saw how those presentations transform into enthusiastic debates. And although it took 10 hours of us being in this room, it was impossible to end this activity. And I know that we have a lot of professors here, and professors know that if the bell rings for recess and students don't rush out, something important is going on. Learning is taking place, and that's what I read when we used to ring the bell, and you continued in dialogue as if nothing had happened. So I'm thinking of the very enriching conversations that took place after the presentation of the Angel Project on the topic of gender inclusion in the Caribbean, or the absolutely accurate comments that our researchers faced while they presented their projects. And that was the idea, the end in mind of this encounter: a safe space, a respectful space, tolerant, fraternal, diverse, where we can have these conversations. So I'd like to thank our expert participants that have enriched this with their presentations, their data, evidence, experiences brought to the table. And it's not as common to have these spaces outside the academia or the technocracy. And I don't mean in a disrespectful way, because I do believe it's necessary, but those spaces where an expert addresses an ample audience, this is not as common. An audience of researchers, decision makers, implementers, members of the civil society, labor unions, and we were able to do this without taking importance away from data and research, but raising the standard, acknowledging that we can have diverse conversation without sacrificing quality, complexity, and without sacrificing pertinence of what was being discussed. And I believe that it is time for evidence and science in which truth is questioned and is confused with opinion and replaced by short-term interests, and that's a central value that's important to defend and celebrate. I'm certain, and I have to thank the national delegations present here. Of course, we're pleased to have you all here, and we acknowledge that it is a huge effort to travel and dedicate 3 days to this type of events, because we know that you're all busy and you have your everyday work. But I don't know if I should only thank you, because thanking you is just treating you as guests, and none of you are guests in your own home. You're not guests of KIX, you are KIX. No more DSC, no GPE, no, not SUMMA, you all. So we'd like to acknowledge and congratulate you and celebrate your presence, but you're no guests. You're part of us. So, as I mentioned yesterday, I'd like to thank the Ministry of Education of Guatemala for hosting us in this beautiful city, in this beautiful country with so much history, with tragic moments, but also moments filled with hope. And not only the presence of the minister and the vice minister, but the ministerial teams that have actively participated in this process. It's a pleasure to have you all as our KIX family. The IDRC and GPE have been able to work with a common objective, where evidence matters, where it involves many stakeholders, that the need of knowledge arises from the countries, and the responses have to adapt to those needs. So in that process, we've learned, we've improved our target, we've learned to do things better, more relevant. And I'd like to and thanking OCS and SUMMA for the great work. Organizing an event such as this one requires a lot of logistics, macro and micro. Everything is important, everything is urgent. The definition of the agenda, press conferences, presentations. If somebody lost connection or somebody was bit by a dog, you have to deal with it all. But I would like to recognize that this is a result of 3 months of intense work, but not only that, this is the result of years of work, years before KIX existed, the work performed by each one of you. And I'd like to ask you for a huge round of applause for the SUMMA team. I will not name each one because I might forget one of them, and that would be horrible, but for the amazing work you've all done. And thank you all for being here. This is not the end. This is the beginning of what's coming ahead. Thank you very much. So now I'd like to give the microphone to OECS, Germain Anthony, Senior Technical Specialist in Education. An applause for Germain, please.
Thank you, and buenos tardes todos. That's about the extent of my Spanish. And I promise you I only have 1.25 pages, so I will try to be brief. So, dear colleagues, partners, and friends, so as we're really coming to a close at this very enriching convening, I'm here really on the behalf of the OECS Commission with deep appreciation for the collaboration, the commitment, and the clarity of purpose that has characterized our time together over the past 3 days. The OECS itself is proud to have been embraced in the KIX LAC movement, building on the successes of KIX version 1 to KIX 2.0. We applaud the degree of focus, mixed, however, with a necessary level of flexibility that has seen KIX have the impact that it has had so far. This week, we've listened, we've shared, we have reflected. We have heard sobering truths about persistent learning inequities across our region. We've also heard of inspiring stories of innovation from every corner of Latin America and the Caribbean. From foundational learning to inclusive financing, from early childhood development to data systems and resilience, this gathering has made one thing perfectly clear, that we are united by common challenges and strengthened by shared knowledge and practice. But if there's one message we must carry forward from this space, from this day, it is that research and knowledge must be converted into innovation. And this innovation must be purposefully directed towards action. Action that strengthens our capacity and helps sustain impact. As we just witnessed this morning, the ideal of the Antigua Declaration to focus on literacy is a perfect example of a commitment to meaningful action. Needless to say, we can no longer afford to let research live only in reports or let pilot projects fade without scaling. A pilot, if well designed, cannot be so futile that after its implementation, we simply throw it away. It ought to be, instead, the first part of a development process. We shouldn't be afraid to fail. We should be afraid of not trying. The children and educators in our communities deserve systems that learn, adapt, and improve continuously and, of course, deliberately. And we must be mature enough to deal with this notion of failure, this perceived failure. The next attempt must keep getting better. It has to be. In the OECS, we are committed to ensuring that we have learned, what we have learned here informs how we work across our ministries, with our partners, and within our schools. We are equally committed to supporting our member states in transforming these insights into sustainable, scalable interventions that can weather future shocks and deliver real, but importantly, equitable results. Among other things, I think we can look forward to further action in support of early childhood education, teacher capacity development, and of course, improved data systems that are going to support our decision making. We have the benefit of consensus on these key areas for achieving high impact. With respect to IMIS, and as I highlighted earlier this week, we are now at a point where we think we have a strong impetus, a strong momentum for developing what we think will be a robust and sustainable IMIS system for the OECS. Yet, we must humbly admit that we cannot achieve those things if we are not continually sharing and collaborating. The road is still a distance ahead. Finally, we want to thank our co-hosts, SUMMA, IDRC, GPE, the Ministry of Education of Guatemala, and of course, the beautiful people of Antigua for their gracious hospitality and expert facilitation. And to all our regional colleagues, may we return not just inspired, but emboldened to act. This, right now, of course, is not the end of a meeting. It really is the continuation of a movement, and I can assure you that the OECS continues to remain committed to this broader regional partnership. Thank you very much.
And to end with this inspirational last words, I'd like to invite Javier González, Director of SUMMA, and Raúl Chacón, Director of KIX LAC. I'd like to thank you all for your willingness. I cannot thank you each individually, but I'd like to symbolize the appreciation on 3 people in our team, but extending it to the rest of the team. And the first person is Mar Botero. I don't know where Mar is. She's still hiding, but Mar Botero is behind every detail that you see her. There she is. She's the person behind all the details that you see. And believe me that each detail is not only logistics, it's every word, the script, everything that has taken place, the content. And that's part of the deep appreciation to you, Mar. The second person I'd like to thank is Carla Fernandini, who's here with us. You already know her because she's been here during this past 3 days, and I've received many good comments in regards to how spectacular she's been in leading this encounter. And just so you all know, I told her you were born to do this, and I do really believe that. But Carla is also behind every strategic decision that we're making, promoting the agenda that transforms our educational system. So thank you, Carla, and a huge applause for her as well, please. And then the last thank you for my team is for our director, Javier González. His strategic leadership is unique. You all know him, and I'd like to also comment that strategic leadership is not only strategic, but it's also in every detail of what we do. So an applause for Javier as well. Very inspiring. And we're all here to impact positively in our region, and especially to those that are most vulnerable. So this past days, we've been discussing about different topics, and I'd like to highlight that these 3 days are more than only 3 days. Regional KIX started in 2020, in March 2020, and since then, we've been building with all of you and with your teams, as mentioned earlier. And I'd like to highlight in that sense that, well, a specific conversation that we had yesterday, which referred to the need of emphasizing, and as a matter of fact, all of us here understand this, but emphasizing on the intra-school factors, those that allow modifying conditions of what actually goes on inside every school, and of course, inside each classroom. Those of us who are passionate for what we do believe in that, versus this idea of extra school factors that we might think weigh, such as social and cultural factors, which are precisely what we want to transform, starting with education. So there's a perspective that can be contradictory, which is that perspective of education as something that reproduces the unequal social order, which was mentioned in this past days. The education that we have is reproducing inequality, but at the same time, that's a challenge, and that's what we're trying to do. We are convinced and certain that education is a transformational vehicle and an emancipating vehicle, and therefore I'd like to thank the vision that BBU provides in regards to what has been is being done in Sobral. So thank you, BBU, for that, and applause for BBU as well. So I won't extend in this, but I would just like to reinforce in regards to what has been discussed. We need to continue cooperating radically inside our countries. We know that's not a simple task, but we need the civil society to sit down with the ministries of education, for teacher unions to also be part of this, as well as universities, and for all of us to be able to reach agreements regarding things that we can agree on. The agenda that we are discussing now, the Declaration of Antigua, we want that to be a declaration that transcends legitimate differences, and that allows us to reach agreements in agendas that we can move forward on tomorrow and Monday. So, and I would also like to highlight the participation of Haiti, specifically the difficulties this country is facing, and find a way to be more solidary with them. We know they're going through hard times. The representatives of Haiti are here from Tegucigalpa. Well, in Tegucigalpa, they couldn't attend, but we're very pleased to have them here with us. So thank you for being here. And last, I'd like to say that we're going to continue in the short term to going deeper in the conversation in regards to early childhood throughout the rest of the year, and we will make sure to connect that throughout the year 2026 with the effort in professional trainings for teachers in initial education and continuous education. We will continue going in depth into that. And last, I'd like to say that we will continue making our best effort as we have up to now. So thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. I guess we're all tired. We're at that stage where we're trying to make sure this ends. We want to go home because I will not be repetitive with what has been already said. I believe this has been very inspiring to listen to Florencio, Ian, Germain, the reflections of Raúl, who's leading the half of Latin America so virtuously. So this is an art and a science at the same time. I would just like to say that we have to take action. I'll continue saying that. I think that this has already been said. This is not just an isolated event. This is an encounter, which is part of a journey that we started many years ago, but with the conviction that we have to leave formalities and actually start implementing. People are waiting for us to implement, to take action. And I know that's not easy, and that requires fighting with some people, which we would prefer not to. And some Latin Americans said that we have to break or crack the eggshell to get to where we need to get. So we basically need to move forward together. We have to make our projects take action. But the project led by Lorette of UI, that's a project that's in a network, that's innovative, based on evidence, amazingly ambitious. And we're very proud to be your partners, Lorette, and to continue working on that. But we do need resources. We need to implement that curriculum in the next 5 years. Otherwise, it'll just be a beautiful curriculum, a beautiful book on a shelf, and not what it could have been. We need resources to implement this in the next 3 to 5 years. That UI curriculum. We also need ministers from the Caribbean to facilitate the articulation with schools, because one of the key pillars is a practicum, how we implement this education. So we need to articulate with schools. I've been in St. Vincent, Barbados, and that articulation still has some work to be done. And I'd like to give you another example, the example of El Salvador. As a country support, which is a flexible mechanism that articulates what we were saying, the political times with the technical times, in a very efficient way under the leadership of Minister Pineda. And what this project shows is that it is possible to make political decisions based on evidence. It is possible if we do this seriously. And that's one of the things that, just as Florence mentioned, some years ago there were more promises, but now we see more action. And therefore there's more responsibility to make progress. So I'd like to thank, because it couldn't be in another way, but with the partners, Ian, Kate, Mohammed. I think that Gata and Mohammed had to leave already. Oh, Mohammed is right here. Okay, Gata was the one who had left. But Mohammed comes from the Lebanon. It might be a very far away country, but there are so many Lebanese in Brazil, Chile, and now in KIX in Latin America. So clearly GPE has been a spectacular partner in the sense of flexibility. I recall in Canada when we were discussing with Ian the topic of country support. And when we were trying to rethink, I don't know now if it was Canada or another country, but I recall that we were trying to rethink between Flora, Ian, and the different conversations we had about country support to be more responsive, to be a system or mechanism that allowed to change things. So on one side that, and on the other hand, I'd like to thank Tricia and Florencio, because once again, they're people who work every day with us, with whom we discuss criteria, orientation, how to make this happen, which is half science and half art. So we thank not only all of what you do, but also for doing it with heart. And OECS is an institution that's Soldana in a region because of geographic situations. It might seem like a completely entire different continent, but we have so much to move forward, and not only in education. I love being there because I love spending time with my college friends, Joel, Lorette, and with all the people from OECS. Of course, there's a cultural things that makes it easier. So there's not a lot of differences now that we come to think of it. And I'd also like to thank SUMMA, the team that works very hard to make this happen with all of you. Because like I said, this is thanks to all of you, Ministries of Education, but behind that is the SUMMA team. Raúl, that leads the KIX initiative from SUMMA, Carla, Director in Strategic Matters in SUMMA, and she was working in the seminar, giving it the depth of what we wanted to achieve. Mar, who's also always hiding behind the flags, but she's right there. She's always present. She's like the internet. You can't see her, but she's always there. You know she's there, although you can't see her. Mar is always there, connected. But we'd also like to thank the rest of the team. Dante, who leads a series of projects in innovation. Rafael. Where's Rafael? Rafael, thank you. He's like a 5G, internet 5G. Just as Mar, they're always behind the stage, but he's the one who helps give depth, vision, philosophy to everything we do at SUMMA. Rafael has taught me so many things. We've worked together for the past 20 years. And I'd also like to congratulate and thank Soledad, Marcelo, Maria Jose, Jennifer, Agata, Pedro, Rosa Maria, she's right there, and also Analia, and the Inter-American Development Bank. And we're very pleased to continue strengthening this family, this SUMMA family. So having thanked genuinely, because we know we leave many things on the side. Sometimes our family, our schedules are tight. But I believe that at the same time, the passion that we have for what we do is what brings us together. So I'd like to say, just as Nobel Prize winner said, she was a professor, a rural professor, and she was a Nobel Prize winner, Gabriela Mistral. She said, the future of children is always today. Tomorrow it'll be too late. Let's stop projecting in 10 years, in 20 years. It's today. It's not that children are the future, it's today. So having said that, I'd like to make a calling to end with an action, and not with words, but a very symbolic action, which is for the first 3 ministers who are still here in the room to sign. They've already seen and approved the Declaration of Antigua that you have proposed. So I'd like to call on stage the Minister Mauricio Pineda, the Minister David Andrew, and the Minister Curtis King. Okay, we need 2 copies, please. One in English and one in Spanish. Rafael? One in English and one in Spanish. Minister Curtis King?
Do you hear me? Yeah. No. So the idea would be to okay. So there's a English and Spanish version approved by the ministries. So please.
Okay, I'll go ahead and read it. In the city of Antigua, Guatemala, between 18th and the 20th of June 2025, we held the regional encounter of KIX LAC, guaranteeing the foundational learnings and holistic development of first childhood or early childhood for social justice in Latin America and the Caribbean. KIX LAC Hub is an initiative led by SUMMA, Innovation Laboratory in Education for Latin America and the Caribbean, in collaboration with the OECO, the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States, and supported by GPE and IDRC. The objective is to promote the right to education with a focus on social justice, and therefore this initiative seeks to respond to the priorities in education of the different countries, researching and innovating to propose feasible and effective solutions based on evidence. So in this encounter, ministers and authorities of 11 ministries of education, Latin America and the Caribbean participated. In addition, over 100 representatives of international and multinational organizations have participated, development banks, universities, labor unions, and academia from Latin America, Asia, and Europe. And the purpose of this encounter has to move forward in a collaborative and in a regional agenda that's shared, that promotes learnings, equity, and inclusion in our schools. And for this purpose, we've worked based on 3 pillars: listening, reflecting, and taking action collaboratively to impact learning. And therefore, we've approached foundational learning problems, raising and sharing innovative experiences with the purpose of generating concrete actions. In this framework, the ministers that sign make a calling to pass from commitment to action for educational transformation. In particular, the ministries commit to make the efforts in order to achieve and make sure that our children, without exception, are competent in literacy, guaranteeing that they can all read and write and understand what they read by the age of 9. So this deserves an applause. I haven't finished. I just think that the commitment is huge. So in order to achieve this goal, which we denominate as the Declaration of Antigua, the signing countries will transform pedagogic and make all the efforts to sustain this transformation. Finally, we acknowledge the importance of our educational policies to be based on educational justice principles and informed and rigorous evidence and contextualized to the realities of a region. The calling is ambitious. The signing countries and all those who want to contribute to this initiative will work to transform ourselves in territories free of illiteracy, where we ensure the right to education, not only in regards to access, but also in regards to the quality, equality, and inclusion. So we make a calling to international organizations as well as to our partners and collaborators to join efforts in collaborating in this task without precedence in the region in order for the framework of the OCDS for all our children to be competent in literacy. We reaffirm that this is an enormous challenge ahead, but this, in light of the evidence that we have, this is an ethical responsibility and a commitment that's hopeful and opens door to everyone to quality learning, to autonomy, and to liberty that's brought with knowledge. Only working together will we achieve development, social cohesion, and peace that we deserve in our region. Signing ministries, Mauricio Pineda, Minister of Education of El Salvador, Anabela Maria Geraca, Minister of Education of Guatemala, David Andrew, Minister of Education of Grenada, Curtis King, Minister of Education of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Robert, Permanent Secretary for the Minister of Education of Dominica, strategic partners that assigned SUMMA, and OECS, the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States. And the idea is for this document to be sent to the other ministries in order for the ministers that are not present to make the decision to join this calling, such as the permanent secretary. We only made reference to him because he expressed his support, but we will have that ratified afterwards. So now we'll pass on to the signature. The English and Spanish versions, and then we'll do that in the right format. But this is a symbolic act.
It's fine. Yeah.
This is also in English, so you guys need to sign this one too. Thank you. That one, no. This one is in Spanish. Oh, yeah. So I need to sign this. Bien. Y la señora de... Ah, okay. Yeah. There's one that needs to be signed, right? That needs to be signed. Only two, right? One in Spanish and one in... Una en español y una en inglés. Sí.
Creo que no hay.
So there's no better way to end this encounter with an applause and to take action. And to those of you who have interpretation devices, please make sure you drop them off on your way out. Have a safe return home. So for those of you who have registered for the guided visit, we're ready to take the tour for those of you who'd wish to come. So also remember to confirm your itineraries, and at 7 p.m. we will have vehicles to take you to the cocktail party. Thank you very much.